I put together my top 5 U.S. men's national team manager coach candidates. Now, as we know, the U.S. Soccer Federation is in the process of picking the role that will pick this next coach. So we still got a while, but it's never too early to start thinking about things. Some of these you will know, some of them you may not know, some of them you will agree with, and undoubtedly some of them you won't agree with. All right, let's start off at number 5, somebody that is, I think, probably high on many people's lists, Jesse Marsch. Certainly he is available. Certainly he has had an interesting career on and off the field from a soccer perspective. Of late, getting fired from Leeds, but his soccer trajectory as a coach has been fast and furious, and it has to be said, up and down, which isn't necessarily a problem. And I think that there are a lot of people that say this guy, Jesse Marsch, checks a lot of boxes in terms of the person that he is, the coach he is, his background, and what the United States needs specifically for 2026. And I say that because all of these are relative to 2026. And I think I'd be the first to admit that 2026 is going to be, and I think already is, unlike any other World Cup that we have ever prepared for. And so this choice has to be right. And this choice is going to reflect the fact that this is a very different type of World Cup, hosting it and everything that we have talked about in terms of the possibility and the value, and more importantly, the opportunity. All right, so Jesse Marsch comes in at 5. Number 4. Now, I've tried to keep this to people that are available and or gettable, if that's even a word. This is a guy who I think is really, really interesting, and I think would really resonate with Americans leading up to the World Cup and then in the World Cup. And that is Herve Renard, okay? We know that he has just taken a position to, I guess, salvage the craziness that is the French Federation when it comes to the women's side, and will be leading the French women into the World Cup. And while he may have signed a longer-term type of contract, I do believe that there is a chance for the U.S. or for anybody to have him lead the way when it comes to a men's World Cup, or a men's team, or a women's team for that matter, after the World Cup this summer. And as we have talked about, Mosse, I don't think this decision is going to come until this summer. So he's coached Morocco. We last saw him coaching Saudi Arabia. He is just from an aesthetic perspective, someone that seems to command a room, and you can't take your eyes off of him. And he has had success with teams of lesser quality and lesser note. I think he has done more with less. And in the U.S. situation, while he may be doing more with less when it comes to the actual amount of talent, the resources at his disposal and the opportunity, I think, will be greater than anything that he has ever had. And I think he would relish something like that. When it comes to number 3, our good friend Patrick Vieira. Now, it hasn't gone swimmingly from a coaching perspective since he left NYCFC, going over to Nice and then to Crystal Palace, where he was very recently fired. But again, this is somebody who has historic knowledge and, I think, important knowledge and history when it comes to the U.S. Renard doesn't, it should be said, and so that's a knock against him. But Patrick Vieira, with his time in the United States, and I think a really successful time at NYCFC, I think lends himself to understanding the challenges, and I do think you have to understand the challenges of coaching a U.S. team and understand the history, and I think respect the history of what has come before you and what it can be going forward. And I think the international role of coaching, I think that might be something that he would really enjoy. He is a cosmopolitan type of dude. He has seen and done it all. I don't think that he is elitist in the way that he views the sport. So I think that he can adjust to the realities of an American team, that it's not France or another team out there. And I think, like I said, he can get some good and more good out of a team. So Patrick Vieira comes in at number 3. Now, number 2 is an interesting one because I don't think that there's anybody on this list that would bring more excitement, joy, and pride at representing the United States in the capacity of coach. And again, specifically for 2026, and that's Jim Curtin. We have already seen him basically say, if you want me to be an assistant coach, I'm there. I will do that. I think that while he certainly doesn't have the incredibly robust history and coaching resume that others do, and it's only one team, albeit a team that has been incredibly successful, and talk about doing more with less. And many of the players that have come through the system, he has seen at different times. I like Jim Curtin for a number of reasons, not the least of which is his character and his personality. And I think that we have to have somebody that not only the players gravitate to and respect and enjoy, but that the general public, not just the soccer people out there in the U.S., but the general public look at and can relate to and can grasp onto. And I think the way that Jim Curtin speaks about soccer, it is inclusive in that he brings everybody in. When I hear him talk about soccer, I can hear people that might not know anything about soccer saying, this guy is somebody that I would follow. This guy is somebody that I can understand. This guy is somebody that can break things down to its most essential form and can explain things. And that's the type of person that I want leading. And I don't think that there's anybody, like I said, that values and respects and has more pride for being an American coach than Jim Curtin. And he wears it on his sleeve. And I love the fact that he doesn't take any shit and that he uses that pride and has harnessed that pride and won't suffer fools and won't accept that people have a bad perception of American players or American coaches or American soccer. And like I said, has harnessed that and would use that as a power in the summer of 2026. So he comes in at number 2. But my number 1 is Gregg Berhalter. Now, I'm going to have to explain this because I think it's important. For those that have listened to me over the years, you will know that I have a rule in that I don't think that a coach for a national team should coach multiple cycles. I think it gets stale, and I think that regardless if you win a World Cup or you come in last, that you should say thank you, and you should pass it on to somebody else. We've talked about a number of coaches, Mosse, in this segment, in this pod, where they're bucking that trend because that was kind of conventional wisdom. Not by all, but by many. And yet we're talking about the Didier Deschamps, and we're talking about the Southgates, and the list goes on and on and on. And Mancini's, these types of coaches that now, through multiple cycles, and some cycles that have not been successful, where they are sticking with coaches. Even saying that, I still would have been fine had my criteria been fulfilled where it came to the end, we moved on from Gregg Berhalter. But, and I've said this before, and I will repeat it, what has happened relative to Gregg Berhalter, I do not abide by that. No, I do not think that that is ultimately fair. And so, yes, there is an element of principle. You have somebody in your midst who has been wronged, unfairly maligned, and has suffered because of the behavior and because of the actions. This is a man with obviously experience, arguably, and if you go statistically, the most successful coach that the United States has had. I do agree with our guest from last week, Brendan Hunt, that he did everything that was asked of him. Could he have done more? Could he have been more successful? Could he have made different choices at different times? Absolutely. But there is now part of me that, one, wants to stand on principle and say, no, we're not going to allow that to happen to a good man. And in essence, we are going to reward him and say, we are going to give you another cycle here, and the most important cycle in modern history when it comes to the U.S. men's national team leading up to 2026. The other part, and we've already heard, is that obviously, internally, players support this guy. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to come out and say this guy sucks, okay? But we are now seeing multiple players that are backing Gregg Berhalter. And I'm not saying that all of them do, but there obviously has been an affinity that has been created over the last 4 years that Gregg Berhalter has been in charge with this group of players. And that's a good thing. And then the final reason would be, I don't think that anybody is going to work harder. I don't think that anybody is going to appreciate more the opportunity because of the things that I'm talking about, because of the shit that has gone on, than Gregg Berhalter. And I think that he will relish and respect the opportunity, maybe more so than anybody that I have mentioned, because of all of the things that have gone on. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But this is my list. I get to make it. I think that these are all wonderful candidates. I'm not sure any of them will be ultimately interviewed. I'm not sure any of them will get the job. There's a whole other list of people that I would be fine with and I'm confident with. Some notable possibilities here include Aliou Cissé, Senegal coach, Steve Cherundolo, the LAFC coach, Luis Enrique, I've talked about before, who is just this wonderful free spirit, and I think people really would gravitate to him. So those are some other things. This was hard making the list and then putting it in order. But this is my list. Please tell me who you think. Mosse, first reaction to this, though.
When we had Taylor Twellman on, he said that the U.S. Soccer Federation has to, quote-unquote, swing for the fences on this one. You didn't find a place on your list for like a Jose Mourinho or Carlo Ancelotti. You think that's just a pipe dream and don't even waste your time?
No, I don't think it's a pipe dream at all. I just don't think that they're right for the job at this point. I don't think that this group needs this revered, for lack of a better word, older generation of a coach at this moment for 2026. So maybe that's ageist on my part, but I have to take into account all of the things that a coach brings to the table, and somebody that has been around, which makes him, in your book or others, look that much better. I can see it as a possible detriment.
Someone that clearly wants the job is Thierry Henry. There's a type of person on Twitter that hears the name Thierry Henry and thinks, absolutely, let's go. He's the ideal choice, even though the resume is thin. It's 20 games with Monaco, which didn't go very well, 1 season with Montreal where they missed the playoffs, and then an assistant coach with Belgium. I don't know to what degree you want to assign their results to him. 3rd place at one World Cup, but then crashed out in the group stage of the next one. He's a smart guy, a good analyst. You hear him talk. He clearly knows the game. He might interview well, and maybe you like his ideas, and you take a chance on him. Scaloni didn't have much of a resume, so I wouldn't be against Thierry Henry, but it is funny that there's a type of person out there that just hears that name and thinks, oh, my God, that would be amazing. You're clearly not swayed by the name Thierry Henry.
Someday I'll tell you why. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.